going into the investment type of property, and what makes a good investment grade property, there's pretty much everything that you're looking for in an owner-occupier, but you're also looking for good cash flow, and we should all be looking for good capital growth. So when you are, and that's kind of like the spoiler alert for like the end of this podcast, was just you should always be looking for owner-occupier locations, whether you want to be an owner-occupier or investor, because the owner-occupiers are the ones that drive the emotional ticket price whenever you choose to sell it.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, so looking at
what percentage of Australians that purchasing property are owner occupiers?
Majority, good question, but
and knowing that it's a majority is like that's what you want to buy for.
Yeah,
because it's not just the purchaser of when you sell it, but it's also the owner, like the person who wants to rent there. They want to rent there because it's where they want to live.
Yeah, and even if you're owner occupying, like there's suburbs within every local government area. So we're on the Gold Coast here. If you were like, well, I want to live in the Gold Coast, that's when I go down to the data side and go, well, based on that, which suburbs within the Gold Coast are showing good signs of short-term growth? Because then you're going to position yourself in a better way where if you buy into that suburb, which it might not be, your primary suburb like Burleigh or Palm Beach or something like that, but it might be just on the outskirts where you're getting the best of both worlds, but your capital growth chances are going to amplify because you're in that next wave of price growth, because obviously the ripple effect that happens, and we talked about this in previous podcasts, but a location gets really a lot of high interest, very hot, and then you will see, like, say, classic example, Burleigh Heads on the Gold Coast. It's just a beautiful lifestyle, and over the past few years has been booming before all the COVID and everything. And then the ripple effect from that was it got too expensive for most people, so they looked for the next best location, and then it was Palm Beach, which is next door to it. Same sort of lifestyle amenities, just didn't have the headland essentially. So Burleigh will always be the primary, but what it basically does is people's mindset goes to, well, I've got $1.5 million to play with. I need a house. I want a house. I can't afford Burleigh. I can afford Palm Beach, Mermaid Beach, Miami, East Beach.
Yeah.
And you've just seen it just ripple out that way. So when I'm looking at it, and even for owner-occupiers, I'm like, well, where is that best next growth location?
Yeah.
And
I think it's good for that owner-occupier knowing that best growth location, not just for the finance of like you're going to get capital growth, and if you do rent it out in the future, yield, but also does the living conditions get better? Like Palm Beach just gets better and better and better. In terms of amenities, not in terms of parking. For me, with a push bike and stuff, it's
because now you can walk down to like really great cafes, you got really great restaurants, and then and that's the also thing too. So you go to Sydney, yes, they don't have parking readily available, but it's because they don't need to. People love that lifestyle where they go and live in those old school terrace homes, and they've got a lot of character. And all they need to do is walk out their front door, walk to the bus stop, and then that bus takes them to work. I understand that, because getting in a car every day is it can be a pain.
Imagine, I think it would be, I don't know, public transport has a bit of a stigma around like people being just on their phone looking down, probably not being the happiest. But imagine if you lived in an area where there was a lot of character and you jumped on the bus every morning and you were just hanging out with your mates on the way to work. That would be really cool.
Yeah, well, and you don't get stuck in traffic, and they've got all the bus lanes. But
so then you got the opposite side, like you've got buy with both hats on, like an owner occupier, understanding if you were to live there as an owner occupier, or what the demographic of the person that wants to live there is wanting in that type of property, and then also look at the financial side of like, is it got good capital growth, and will it have good yield? But then a lot of people become biased on the proximity of where they buy. If they're just going for an investment, they become biased towards where they buy, because sometimes they have this thing of like, I want to be able to inspect it, or I want to be able to drive past it. What's your thoughts on that? Because I feel like a lot of people could be squashing their potential. in terms of capital growth and finances, just based on the feelings of emotionally feeling safe because they're in their comfort zone. So comfort zone can be, can be good to lean into it at times, but I think also jumping out of it and understanding the balance between it.
Yeah, another key point just on that owner occupier location where you're going to choose, just before we jump into it, is I know it's hard to plan for the future, but I mean you can kind of step your life out and go, well, where I'm going to be in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and
or where would you want to be?
Yeah, where would you want to be?
Yeah,
and having that sort of deep conversation with yourself or your partner is really important when you're deciding which path. Do you want to be a rent investor or do you want to be an owner occupier?
Yeah, it's such a good topic to bring up.
Yeah, definitely spend a bit of time and just think about it because I did some calculations before we started the pod. So if you're looking at $1 million purchase, as an investor, you're spending $38,000 in Queensland on just stamp duty. As an owner occupier, there's a discount, so you only pay $30,000.
Save $8,000.
Woo!
Yeah.
But my whole point on this is, if you buy somewhere that you end up selling, the transaction costs are pretty high. So even if you were to buy $1 million property, your $38,000 or $30,000 like out of pocket for the stamp duty, plus your legals, call that a couple of grand, and transfer costs another couple of grand. And then if you were to sell it, say on a 2.5% commission rate to the sales agent, that's another $25,000.
Yep.
So you can see it quickly runs to about $60,000, $65,000. Even take into account, like, you got to get a removalist, move all your stuff in, buy all your stuff. Like, it is an expensive transaction, and that's why you take that time to think about it.
Yeah.
Because if you buy and sell, even in the same market, it doesn't go anywhere. Like, there's the risk of it could go back, it could go up as well, but it's a very expensive mistake in life that's going to set you back financially. So